Before I could explain, he punched me, knocking me to the ground. The impact was jarring, and I felt a sharp pain shoot through my jaw. Before I knew what was happening, he handcuffed me, and as I tried to catch my breath, a seizure hit. I was helpless, but Bender just laughed. I convulsed on the ground for minutes and hurt myself as I did. When it finally stopped, I was dizzy and in rough shape, and I pleaded with Officer Bender to see reason. "Please, I didn't do anything. Check the cameras. You'll see." "Yeah, I'll bet. Don't worry. I called for backup, and when they arrive, we'll take you downtown and process you, and your dog will be brought to the pound where he'll be put down." Backup arrived, and they stuffed Tanner into a small crate while I was thrown into a police car. As we drove to the station, I begged the officers to review the restaurant's security footage. They were reluctant to listen to me, but they also knew that they needed to perform a full investigation. I never thought that my life would revolve around so much drama at a coffee shop of all places. I mean, I've always felt safe and comfortable going to them anywhere in the world, but here I am, and boy, do I have a crazy story to share. My name is Alvin, and my service dog Tanner is my constant companion. Tanner isn't just a dog, he's my lifeline. He helps me manage my epilepsy, alerting me before seizures, and ensuring I'm safe when they happen. Thankfully, I have always been good with computers, and I managed to find a job as a cybersecurity specialist. Working remotely means I can work from anywhere, and my favorite spot has always been a cozy coffee shop downtown. The coffee is great, it's close to a lovely park, and the food is die for. However, nothing ever stays the same, and one day, we were surprised when we showed up for usual morning routine. We saw an odd sign in the window that said it was under new ownership. The shop had been sold to a new owner, Ryan, who from the moment he walked out of the back room and into the main shop area, well, he seemed to have a chip on his shoulder. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, but it was very obvious that he had a strong disdain for animals. "Hey you, yeah, you with the dog, you can't bring that mud in here anymore." "Excuse me? Hold on, he isn't just some random animal. Tanner is a service dog. He's allowed to be wherever I am." "I don't care what kind of dog he is. No animals in my shop. Now get that smelly beast out of here." I was taken aback by his hostility. I tried to explain Tanner's role, and I even tried to show him the paperwork I carried with me, stating that Tanner had the legal right to be there, but Ryan wasn't having it. To my surprise, he called the police. It was annoying, but I figured that once the police showed up that I could show them my paperwork and everything would be sorted out. But things only ended up getting worse. When Officer Bender arrived, I felt a sliver of hope. He had a police dog with him. Surely he'd understand. But that hope was quickly dashed. "Look, you need to leave. If you don't, I'll have my dog take care of yours. Permanently if you catch my drift. On top of that, if you're not out of here in the next minute, you'll be under arrest, and your dog will be put down." "But officer, we have a legal right to be here, and Tanner isn't hurting anyone." "I didn't stutter, buddy. Just leave before I order my dog to rip your dog to pieces. Your choice." Fear gripped me as I left the shop, Tanner by my side. I felt humiliated and powerless. I had never been so mistreated before. In the whole 5 years that I had Tanner, I had never encountered people like Ryan and Bender. Sure, there were some people that gave me grief for Tanner being with me, but once they understood that he was a service dog, they usually stopped and apologized. Instead, both of them were so incredibly hostile. The next day, I was determined not to let Ryan's prejudice control my life. I decided to work from the restaurant next door. I figured it was a safer option, but I was wrong. Ryan somehow spotted me and stormed over, his face red with anger. "What did I tell you about coming around here with that dog? Leave, or I swear I'll make you regret it." "Ryan, I'm not even in your shop. You can't force me to leave this restaurant. They have already told me that it's okay that he is in here. And why do you hate Tanner so much? He's a service dog, not a pet." "I hate all dogs. One attacked me as a kid. They smell, they shed, and they're loud. Just get out. I'm good friends with the owner of this restaurant, and he'll take my side if I tell him that your dog is violent." I tried to reason with him, promising to leave once my food arrived and take it with me to go. Ryan begrudgingly left, but not without a final threat. Once he was gone, I changed my mind and decided to stay and eat there. As I ate, I noticed Officer Bender and his dog partner walking by. He saw me and made a beeline for my table. "You again?" I thought I told you to stay away. Just because this isn't the same shop as yesterday doesn't change a thing. Please, officer, I'm just trying to work. Tanner is a service dog. This is my right." He sneered, enjoying his power trip. His presence made my heart race, but I tried to remain calm. Meanwhile, Ryan was up to something. I saw him sneaking around. He entered the restaurant again, and I braced myself for a shouting match, but he just skulked around while I arguing with Officer Bender. I later found out that while I was speaking with Bender, that Ryan was placing a stake on the ground near Tanner. Thankfully, Tanner is very well trained, and he ignored it, but Bender's police dog wasn't as disciplined. The dog rushed over and ate the steak, convulsing moments later before collapsing. I then realized that Ryan had poisoned the steak and had intended for Tanner to eat it, but had inadvertently seriously hurt the police dog. "Oh no! Someone call a vet quickly!" "What happened? What did you do to my dog?" "You did this. You're going to pay." Before I could explain, he punched me, knocking me to the ground. The impact was jarring, and I felt a sharp pain shoot through my jaw. Before I knew what was happening, he handcuffed me, and as I tried to catch my breath, a seizure hit. I was helpless, but Bender just laughed. I convulsed on the ground for minutes and hurt myself as I did. When it finally stopped, I was dizzy and in rough shape, and I pleaded with Officer Bender to see reason. "Please, I didn't do anything. Check the cameras. You'll see." "Yeah, I'll bet. Don't worry. I called for backup, and when they arrive, we'll take you downtown and process you, and your dog will be brought to the pound where he'll be put down." Backup arrived, and they stuffed Tanner into a small crate while I was thrown into a police car. As we drove to the station, I begged the officers to review the restaurant's security footage. They were reluctant to listen to me, but they also knew that they needed to perform a full investigation, and so thankfully, they watched the footage. Hours later, I was released. The footage clearly showed Ryan sneaking up behind me and planting the steak on the ground, giggling the whole time. It was plain as day that I had nothing to do with the poisoned steak. Once I was released, I went straight to a lawyer and told them everything that had happened. He told me that I had a very good case and that he could guarantee me results. My wrongful arrest led to a lawsuit, and I was awarded a substantial settlement, and Bender was fired and sentenced to prison for his actions. He didn't end up being in prison for more than a year, but it was something at least. Ryan, however, wasn't so lucky. His attempt to harm Tanner backfired, and he was sentenced to 10 years in prison for the death of a police dog, who was considered a police officer just as much as any human. In the aftermath, I struggled to process everything. Tanner stayed by my side, his calm presence a comfort during the turbulent days. The coffee shop was sold again, and the new owner took it in a completely different direction. It became a cat cafe. And of course, service animals were welcome so long as they got along well with cats. And Tanner, being a very good boy, loved visiting the cats. Despite the trauma, we found happiness again, and for that, I'm forever grateful. With Tanner by my side, I know we can face anything. Our journey has been difficult, but it has taught me the value of resilience and the importance of standing up for what's right. Together, we've moved forward, stronger than ever. The first few days after the incident were a blur of legal consultations and media attention. Tanner and I became the center of a heated debate about the rights of service animals. Advocacy groups reached out, offering support and sharing similar stories of discrimination. It was overwhelming, but I knew this was bigger than just Tanner and me. One night, as I sat at home with Tanner curled up at my feet, I received a call from an old friend, Emma, who worked as a journalist. She had seen the news and wanted to write a feature about our experience. We talked for hours, and for the first time, I felt like our story could make a difference.
Alvin, people need to hear this. It's not just about raising awareness, it's about creating change. Are you ready for that?
I think so, Emma. If our story can help even one person, it's worth it. The article was published a week later, and the response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from across the country, people sharing their own experiences, offering support, and thanking us for speaking out. It was both heartwarming and humbling. I also think it helped bring attention to our case and possibly helped to prevent Officer Bender from getting just a slap on the wrist. Meanwhile, the legal proceedings against Officer Bender and Ryan continued. The courtroom was tense as evidence was presented, showing the clear discrimination and abuse of power. The judge didn't hold back in his sentencing, emphasizing the severity of their actions. The justice system had worked in our favor, but the journey had taken its toll. I was determined to use this experience to advocate for better training and awareness about service animals. After 1 year, when Officer Bender was released, he couldn't get any proper job because people had posted pictures of him online, exposing how cruel he was to both dogs and humans when he was a police officer. Employers were afraid of getting a bad reputation by hiring him, so he ended up working as a security guard at a small restaurant. Even though I was compensated, I still wanted my own revenge. I tracked Officer Bender to where he worked and hired 2 guys to kidnap him. We locked him in a basement with 3 different dogs for 3 days and made him eat from the same dish as the dogs. When the guys finally released him, he had to skip town that same night. Serves him right. The cat cafe became our sanctuary. Tanner quickly became a favorite among the patrons, especially the cats, who seemed to enjoy his gentle nature. Life slowly returned to normal, but the lessons we learned stayed with us. Thanks for watching.
One afternoon, as I walked home from the grocery store, a white van screeched to a stop in front of me. 2 masked individuals jumped out, grabbing me and throwing me into the back. My head hit the floor, and everything went black. When I woke up, I was tied to a chair in an abandoned building that was crumbling around me. The 2 masked figures were in front of me and were arguing.
We have to kill her. If we don't, she'll give birth to a child that will ruin our family.
But she's pregnant. I'm not sure if we should go through with this. Couldn't we just threaten her and beat her up until she agrees to walk away and leave our son alone?
Of course we can't, because we both know that she won't agree to abort the child, and we can't allow it to exist.
I instantly recognized their voices. It was Emmett's parents. My heart pounded in disbelief and fear. I couldn't believe that they hated me so much they were willing to kill me and my child. Please, let me go. You don't have to do this.
Quiet, you stupid bitch. We're doing this for the family.
Yes, now keep your mouth shut. We don't care what you have to say.
Suddenly their minds were made up and they began to gather up materials that filled me with even more fear. They began pouring gasoline around me, and it was obvious that they were preparing to set the building on fire. Hi there, my name is Gemma, and let me tell you that as a Black woman, life has not always been easy. Between interactions with authorities or the random racist person, I've had my fair share of people that would raise my blood pressure, but thankfully I've met lots of wonderful people as well that didn't care about the color of my skin and just loved me for who I was. Emmett was just such a person. Meeting Emmett was like something out of a dream. I had always been passionate about sports and exercising, and finding someone who shared that love seemed too good to be true. But there he was, in the middle of a Saturday morning run at the park, jogging right beside me. We had such a wonderful conversation, and I instantly found him incredibly attractive. You always run this early?
Yeah, it's the best time to beat the heat. Plus, you get the whole day ahead of you. Not to mention you might just get lucky and meet someone amazing too.
Oh yeah? And did you meet someone amazing?
I met you, so I would say that indeed I did.
That morning run turned into coffee, and coffee turned into dinner. Before long, Emmett and I were inseparable. We bonded over our shared love for staying active, spending weekends hiking trails, exploring new sports, and even trying out yoga classes together. He was my partner in every sense of the word, and I fell hard for him. One particularly memorable weekend, we participated in a charity marathon. Neither of us was aiming to win, but running side by side, encouraging each other through every mile, felt like a victory in itself.
Gemma, if we keep this up, we might actually finish without collapsing.
Speak for yourself. I'm going to collapse at the finish line for dramatic effect. We crossed the finish line hand in hand, laughing and exhausted. It was in those moments that I knew I wanted to spend my life with him. So when Emmett proposed a year later, it felt like the natural next step. Introducing Emmett to my parents was a breeze. They adored him from the start. He was respectful, charming, and made it clear how much he loved me. Honestly, I wondered if they might love him more than they loved me. However, I was not prepared for what happened when I met Emmett's parents. I had wrongfully assumed that after seeing how wonderful a person that Emmett was, that his parents would be the same. But meeting Emmett's parents could not have gone any worse. Well, it probably could have, but I would hate to see how it could have been any worse. We had planned a casual dinner at their home, hoping to make a good impression. Everything seemed fine at first, but I could sense a shift in the atmosphere the moment I walked through the door. Emmett's parents were polite, but there was an underlying tension I couldn't ignore. For starters, they started at me a lot as if I was some kind of alien. Later that evening, as I stepped out to take a phone call, I overheard their conversation through the open window.
Emmett, do you really think you can be with someone like her?
What do you mean by that? Blacks are just too loud and commit a lot of crimes. She is no different. Trust me, we're just concerned. You know how people like her can be. Like her? Yes, like her. You know how uncivilized black people can be. If she hasn't already, she will just cheat on you one day. They can't help themselves. By the way, who are her parents? Her parents were farmers, but they are off late, Dad. What? You brought home a farmer's daughter? What the hell is wrong with you? We are influential and rich. You don't need such a peasant.
My heart sank. They didn't know I could hear them, but their words stung deeply. Emmett, however, stood his ground. He was clearly taken aback by their words and wasn't having any of it.
If by people like her, you mean black people, then you're way out of line. I love Gemma, and if you can't accept that, then we have nothing more to discuss. I can't believe that you guys felt that way. What is wrong with you?
Hey, don't pull that crap with us. We're just thinking about your future and trying to protect you. Can you really trust her?
This conversation is over. Either you get on board with our relationship and stop being so incredibly racist, or you won't be part of our lives.
What lives? She'll just bring chaos into your life.
Emmett's words filled me with both love and anger. Love for his unwavering support, and anger at the blatant racism of his parents. From that moment, our relationship with them became strained. They tried to intervene, suggesting countless times that Emmett should break things off with me. Their attempts only strengthened our bond. The amount of times that he told them off made me love him all the more because it demonstrated just how much he loved me and how unlike them he was. After some time, we grew disgusted with their attack, and so we decided to elope, cutting out the drama and focusing on our love. The small ceremony was perfect. Just the two of us, surrounded by nature. We had invited a few guests, but on the wedding day, some thugs tried to burn down the venue. Luckily, they were apprehended. We knew this was the work of Emmett's parents, but we had no proof. It was obvious, though, because they had been calling and threatening us, warning that if we went through with the wedding, it would turn into a funeral. The thugs refused to reveal who sent them, and were eventually locked up. Months later, we discovered I was pregnant. Emmett was over the moon, and I was thrilled. We shared the news with friends and family, posting a joyful announcement on social media. At least with those that we knew would celebrate our love. However, we didn't really make a huge attempt to keep it a secret, and many people we didn't tell found out. It wasn't long before Emmett's parents showed up at our door, uninvited and unannounced. Clearly, they had found out that I was pregnant. Neither piece of information made them particularly happy. I knew they would have a lot to say, so I started recording them secretly.
You can't go through with this. Abort the baby. What will my friends say when they see me with a black grandchild gush? We refuse to have our bloodline tainted. If you want to go ahead with this, we won't include you in our will.
How dare you? This is our child, and you have no say in our family.
Family? You shouldn't be a family to begin with. Emmett is white and you're black. You shouldn't have gotten married in the first place.
Are you serious? How can you say such awful things? Listen, if you ever want to be a part of our lives, or our child's life, you better change your attitude. And if you want us in your life, Emmett, then you better make the right choice.
It was too much, and we were done with them. We shut the door, determined to protect our growing family from their toxicity. I was exhausted by their blatant racism. After showing Emmett the recordings, he proposed that we expose his parents. We contacted a journalist who invited us onto a show about interracial marriage and racism. During the broadcast, we played the recordings of my in-laws. The audience was outraged. When the show went viral 3 days later, we learned that my in-laws had lost one of their biggest clients. Emmett's uncles and aunts also cut ties with them. Fans flooded their websites with negative reviews and frequently posted pictures of them on social media, tagging them as prime examples of racists in the USA. This public backlash made them furious. Time passed, and we focused on preparing for our baby's arrival. But fate had other plans. One afternoon, as I walked home from the grocery store, a white van screeched to a stop in front of me. Two masked individuals jumped out, grabbing me and throwing me into the back. My head hit the floor, and everything went black. When I woke up, I was tied to a chair in an abandoned building that was crumbling around me. The two masked figures were in front of me and were arguing.
We have to kill her. If we don't, she'll give birth to a child that will ruin our family.
But she's pregnant. I'm not sure if we should go through with this. Couldn't we just threaten her and beat her up until she agrees to walk away and leave our son alone?
Of course we can't, because we both know that she won't agree to abort the child, and we can't allow it to exist.
I instantly recognized their voices. It was Emmett's parents. My heart pounded in disbelief and fear. I couldn't believe that they hated me so much they were willing to kill me and my child. Please, let me go. You don't have to do this.
Quiet, you stupid bitch. We're doing this for the family.
Yes, now keep your mouth shut. We don't care what you have to say.
Suddenly their minds were made up and they began to gather up materials that filled me with even more fear. They began pouring gasoline around me, and it was obvious that they were preparing to set the building on fire. I struggled against the ropes, desperate to escape. As they lit the gasoline and the room filled with smoke, I finally freed myself and ran, the flames quickly spreading. Emmett's parents panicked as they saw me run away and they tried to chase me, but they were too out of shape to catch me. Running through the smoke that was getting thicker with each passing second was hard, but I managed to find my way to and burst through a door, gasping for air. Moments later, the building was engulfed in flames. I looked around and didn't see Emmett's parents and knew that they were still inside. I hesitated, torn between going back inside and saving them and saving myself. But then the fire department arrived. The firefighters worked tirelessly to extinguish the blaze, but it was too late for Emmett's parents. Their bodies were found inside, their lives claimed by their own hatred. At the hospital, Emmett rushed to my side, relief and worry etched on his face. I was given a clean bill of health, but the emotional scars would take time to heal.
I can't believe they would do this. I'm so sorry, Gemma.
It's not your fault, Emmett. They made their choices. The police and fire department confirmed the tragic outcome. Emmett and I mourned the loss, not of the people, but of the relationship we wished we could have had with them. In the aftermath, Emmett made a decision.
Gemma, I don't want to carry their name anymore. I want to take your last name, and our children should too. Let's start fresh.
I think that's a beautiful idea. And so, we did. We legally changed our last names, symbolizing a new beginning, free from the shadows of the past. Together, we built a loving, happy family, cherishing every moment and creating a legacy of love and acceptance. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and we faced it together, stronger than ever. Thanks for watching. Unlike the first week, she stopped helping with anything. She would order me around and threaten to hit me if I disobeyed. I was stressing my body so much. The doctor had warned me against doing anything stressful until after 3 months. We'd wanted to bring in a nanny, but changed our minds after my mother-in-law offered to live with us and take care of the baby. Whenever Greg was home, her attitude changed. She would pretend to care about us and even do the chores. Greg thought I was in good hands. One day, my mother-in-law brought her friends home and made me cook for all of them. It was so tiring because I also had to take care of my son who couldn't stop crying. I didn't even have any time to eat until they were all gone. Growing up, I'd always dreamed about having a happy home. I saw how cool my mom was with my elder brother's girlfriends, and I fantasized about my future boyfriend's mom being like that to me. I would also imagine matching outfits with my future mother-in-law. Well, in my last year in college, I met Greg. He graduated college 2 years before and was already working and doing well financially. I met him at a restaurant where I went to spoil myself after passing my exams. We were both immediately attracted to each other and found ourselves eating together and discussing. Afterward, we exchanged contacts, and he also drove me back home. As time passed, we got to know each other better, and I discovered that he was 3 years older than me. I mean, I didn't mind. I liked it when men were older because I thought it meant more maturity. He also didn't seem to mind that he was older. I concluded that it was his preference. We got closer and feelings grew. When we finally confessed to each other, 3 months had already passed. I was so excited when Greg told me about his feelings, but he seemed to be even more excited when I told him it was mutual. Greg didn't want me to stress myself with searching for a job, so he used his connections to get me a decent job at a great company. I was so happy and satisfied with how things were moving. One day, when I'd gone over to Greg's to spend the weekend, I gathered courage and asked if he had a mom. He always spoke about his dad and younger sister, but not his mom. Within myself, I'd concluded that she was dead. Shockingly, he responded that he had a mom but wasn't comfortable talking about her. I didn't think much about it until after he engaged me a year later. We were engaged, so I only thought it was right to meet his family. He'd already met mine, but he was always coming up with different excuses whenever I asked to meet his family.
You don't have to be close to them. I'm gonna invite them to the wedding, and you can just meet them there.
I thought that was plain stupid and absurd. I refused and threatened to call off the engagement if he refused to take me to his family. When he saw how serious I was, he agreed and we scheduled a day for it. Well, after meeting them, I understood Greg's point. When we got to the house, I met his father and sister Jane. They were down to earth and very hospitable. His sister showed me around their big house and also made lunch for me. I waited for his mom, but she wasn't anywhere, so I asked.
Oh, she went out for a walk. She should be back anytime soon.
Just as he was talking, I heard the front door open and a petite woman walked in. I was surprised to see how young she was. It was totally unexpected because Greg's dad was over 60. The woman looked like she was in her 30s. When she saw me, she had a confused look on her face. She faced Greg's father and asked him why he didn't call to tell her they had a visitor. I noticed her voice wasn't friendly, but I brushed it off.
Dad didn't know about it, so don't blame him. Her name's Vanessa, my fiancée.
She had a look of shock on her face, and I couldn't tell if it was good or bad. She suddenly faced me, and I could see that she was now wearing a frown.
You brought this thing home to introduce to us? Greg, I've told you countless times not to fall in love with an ugly lady. You'll end up like that mother of yours who married this ugly man and had you both. Are you crazy?
Firstly, ugly? Pfft, never. I'm very much aware of how beautiful I am, and even then, I knew I was gorgeous. I wondered why Greg's mother suddenly called me ugly. Also, I was confused about her choice of words. Was she not Greg's biological mother? I turned to Greg and saw that he was struggling to hold his anger. I immediately knew that there was no peace in the house.
Don't you dare speak about her or Greg's fiancé like that. Vanessa is beautiful. What? Are you feeling insecure again? Are you scared that someone in the family is more beautiful than you?
The woman was stunning, honestly. So, I understood Greg's father's perspective. I'd heard stories about mothers-in-law being jealous of their son's wife. It was weird to experience it happening to me.
Oh, are you going to start a fight with me in front of the stranger?
Can you stop it, Mom?
Well, I was feeling different emotions. I couldn't afford to see the family fighting over something related to me. I don't know what's going on, but I'm certain about one thing. I love Greg, and he loves me too. Ma'am, I sincerely like you and have wanted to meet you for a long time. Please, can you have a sit, and let's not get too worked up.
How dare you? Who gave you the guts to speak in my house? How dare you try to make me the bad person in this?
Well, shocking was an understatement. I was feeling everything. In what way had I tried to make her a bad person? Before I could speak, Greg's sister spoke. She told her mother that the woman was being unfair to me, and that led to an outburst from Greg's mother. She grabbed his sister's hair and began fighting with her. Greg and I were quick to step in. Although I got my hair pulled and a few buttons of my shirt removed, I was able to separate the ladies. Greg's sister apologized to me after their mother stormed off to her room. His father also apologized. After changing into the shirt Greg's sister gave me, Greg and I left the house. On our way to my place, he kept apologizing to me. I told him I wasn't angry, but he didn't stop apologizing. When we got to my house, I asked about the woman's statement, and he revealed to me that the woman wasn't his real mother. Apparently, she used to be one of his mom's workers and had seduced Greg's dad a few years after his mom died. They ended up getting married and she became his stepmother. I got to know that she was openly having affairs with different men, but his dad couldn't do anything about it because she threatened to take half his property if he ever tried to divorce her. I felt so bad for Greg and his family, but I couldn't do anything about it. Well, we got married and his stepmom was in attendance. Luckily, she didn't cause any trouble. Time passed, and I got pregnant. That was nearly 2 years after our wedding. All that time, Greg's stepmom never visited us. You can imagine my surprise when she suddenly showed up at the door a week after I gave birth. She was in tears, apologizing to us for her behaviors toward us. She swore to have turned a new leaf. Greg couldn't believe his eyes and ears. Well, eventually, after she apologized to everyone, she was forgiven. She proposed to move in with us to take care of the baby, and I couldn't be happier. I was finally getting the warmth of my dream mother-in-law. During the first week, she was good to me and the baby. Well, until Greg returned to work, then I realized that it was all a facade. She was still her evil self. Nope, my mother-in-law would sit and watch me do all the chores while still attending to my baby. Unlike the first week, she stopped helping with anything. She would order me around and threaten to hit me if I disobeyed. I was stressing my body so much. The doctor had warned me against doing anything stressful until after 3 months. We'd wanted to bring in a nanny, but changed our minds after my mother-in-law offered to live with us and take care of the baby. Whenever Greg was home, her attitude changed. She would pretend to care about us and even do the chores. Greg thought I was in good hands. One day, my mother-in-law brought her friends home and made me cook for all of them. It was so tiring because I also had to take care of my son who couldn't stop crying. I didn't even have any time to eat until they were all gone. Just when I sat down to eat, my mother-in-law called me to clean up after her friends. She also made me clean the whole house. By the time I was done, night had fallen. Before I was able to eat, it was already only a few minutes before midnight, and that was going to be my first food for the day. After eating, I drifted off to sleep immediately. The next morning, I was woken up by the icy water my mother-in-law poured on me. I burst into tears after receiving a slap from her for no reason. After only a week of my mother-in-law staying with us, I fainted and had to be rushed to the hospital by Greg. There, the doctor revealed that I'd been put under severe stress and had a minor internal injury. Greg was confused because he thought my mother-in-law helped me around the house. An operation was quickly scheduled, and luckily, it was successful. My baby was left in the care of my mother-in-law. When I demanded to see him after the surgery, Greg called his stepmom, but she didn't answer her calls. After several tries with no response, I began to panic. I'd wanted to cover up her crimes, but I couldn't. I told Greg everything and let him know that his stepmom was the reason I was lying on the hospital bed. He was livid. He quickly called his dad and sister and told them everything. They immediately rushed to the hospital. His sister stayed with me while Greg and his dad went home to find my mother-in-law. I was in tears because I was scared for my baby. They reached home and found the house empty. In fear, Greg quickly contacted the police and reported a kidnap. The police swung into action. Greg and my father-in-law went to all the places they suspected her to be, all to no avail. Then, Greg's father got a call from one of his friends who told them that my mother-in-law was escaping with my baby. She told them about how she said something about flying to Mexico. Greg and his father told the police and rushed to the airport ahead of them. Fortunately, they found her and my baby at the airport. When she spotted the police approaching her, she dropped my baby and started running, but she was teased, and she fell down, and she was immediately arrested. Apparently, she'd planned it for a long time. At first, she hated me because I was truly prettier than her. Also, she couldn't have any children because her womb was destroyed, and she was desperate to have a child. She knew I would be hospitalized at some point if she kept stressing me. I was so happy when I held my son again. My mother-in-law's friends visited me at the hospital and apologized for being quiet the whole time. They felt ashamed and said they regretted not telling me earlier. Well, I thanked them for at least not being quiet until it was too late. As for my mother-in-law, her husband immediately divorced her. She couldn't get his properties because of her actions. After the divorce, she was charged to court where she got years imprisonment for kidnapping of a child. emotional and physical assault on me. After a year in jail, information reached us that she had a fight with one of the inmates who she was jealous of for being beautiful. Well, the inmate was very strong, and my mother-in-law ended up getting blinded, as well as a permanently dislocated ankle that caused her to limp forever. When my father-in-law heard it, all he said was, "That serves her right." However, shock froze me as the necklace was found in my room, in one of my drawers.
You steal now, Sally? Where did I go wrong with you?
I can't take this. I can't raise a thief. You're leaving my house today.
I cried and went on my knees, begging them desperately to not send me out. I'm not a thief. I didn't take her necklace. Believe me. Please, don't send me out. My pleas fell on deaf ears. Jake threw my things out and urged my parents to let me go. Of course, they weren't unwilling. I was sent out of my parents' home. Have you ever felt like the least favorite among your siblings? Or have you been shown by your parents that you're their least favorite child? How did it feel? I have experienced it, alongside hatred from my siblings, and I'll share it with you. My name's Sally, and I was born as the middle child. I had two siblings, Penny and Jake. Penny was 3 years younger than me, while Jake was 3 years older than me. My parents were quite wealthy. I mean, we had our own house, 2 cars, and they both ran a small company and a fashion brand. I couldn't remember my experiences before Penny was born, but I knew that as she grew, Jake liked her more. He would always hit and hurl insults at me on the slightest provocation, but Penny was his beloved sibling who didn't deserve any of that. Jake and Penny were very brilliant and would often top their various classes. I was brilliant too, but there was high competition in my class. I was always coming second or third, the top ones only having a slightly higher percentage than mine. But it didn't seem satisfactory to my parents.
They study well, that's why they're able to pass you. Study harder and top your class too. Your siblings do it so easily.
You're older than Penny, but your unseriousness is starting to make it appear the other way around. You should look up to Penny and Jake and learn from them.
I was a sensitive child. Words like that got to me, and it would make me cry. However, my family always got annoyed and called me a weakling. My parents will ignore all my birthdays, but will celebrate that of Penny and Jake, and will make me clean. After the celebration, according to them, I won't amount to anything, since I wasn't as intelligent as Penny and Jake. My parents were bad, but my siblings were insane, especially Jake. I had no idea what wrong I did to him. He was always so happy whenever he got me into trouble with either Penny or my parents. Once, I got mercilessly beaten up by Penny. I was 16 then, and she was only 13. I'd just had my bath after returning from school. As I went to sit at the dining table to enjoy my meal, Jake suddenly came up to me, wearing a devilish grin. "What do you want, Jake? I'm not in the mood for your annoyance, please. I'll appreciate it if you leave me alone now."
Oh, I'd actually come to tell you something important. But since you've asked me to leave, I have no choice.
I didn't say anything. I didn't even lift my eyes from my plate. He walked away laughing. I wondered what it was that he wanted to say. I became curious. The only time Jake ever came to me like that were times when he put me in trouble. Yes. Jake loved to see me getting punished. He would lie against me to my parents, and without asking for my side of the story, they would punish me. Jake was always at a corner, chuckling happily to himself. He also did it to Penny. He would lie about me saying something, and Penny, with her bad temper, would come and fight me. Penny had grown bigger than me. She would easily pass as my elder sister, and that made her even more comfortable bullying me. Whenever Jake liked to make Penny beat me up, he made sure my parents were going to return late so that I'd be asleep before their home. Just after I finished eating and attempted to stand up, 2 hands pressed on my shoulders, forcing me back to the chair. My heart raced. I knew it was Penny. No one else could do that. I turned and saw her behind me, holding a frown.
How dare you? How dare you call me a fat pig in front of your friend?
I didn't even have any friends, so how could I have said that about her? I tried to tell her what she heard was a lie. I don't have any friends, Penny. I only speak to my classmates at school, and it's only a few of them. They sometimes don't even respond to me.
That lie isn't gonna work, Sally. You're a liar and a freaking pretender. All you do is hate on me and talk bad things about me because of your stupid jealousy.
I swear to you, Penny, I've never spoken ill of you to anyone.
You have. You always do. Jake tells me every time. Right, Jake?
Just then, Jake showed up again with a mischievous smile on his face.
Yes. I heard her on 2 different occasions. Her friends also told me. According to them, they felt sad for us because Sally's our sister, and all she does is badmouth us. Well, you especially.
Before I could speak, Penny slapped me. I screamed and fell to the floor, feeling the pain pierce my cheek. Tears quickly gathered in my eyes as I stared at them in disbelief. My own siblings. Jake is lying, Penny. I never said anything bad about you both. I don't have anyone to even say anything to.
Shut up, you liar. You're so filthy. I can see why Mom and Dad hate you. You're ugly, dull, and filled with jealousy and hatred for others. I'm going to make sure Mom and Dad punish you.
Next time, be careful of the things you say. It's unfair to speak so ill of people, especially your siblings.
I cried as I watched them walk away. I tried to go to my room, but I found out that they'd locked my door. I guess they needed it to be easier for my parents to punish me. I sat down on the cold kitchen floor until my parents returned home. Once they settled in the living room, my siblings tabled their lies before them. The next thing I heard was my dad calling my name loudly. Fearfully, I walked out of the kitchen and went to them.
Are you crazy? How could you do such things about your sister?
I'm so disappointed in you. How can you be such a hater? She's your sister. They're your siblings. I can't believe you.
I had no idea what they told my parents. Jake lied. I didn't say anything about them to anyone. He's lying against me. My tears and pleas weren't enough to save my ass from getting whooped. Jake held me while my parents hit me, and Penny stood away from us, smiling happily. They were cruel to me, but I couldn't hate them. I couldn't bring myself to hate them. I kept my distance and only spoke when spoken to. Jake and Penny didn't stop taunting me. Whenever my parents weren't home, they would insult me and follow me around, annoying me in any way possible and daring me to respond. Of course, I never did. I knew too well then to say anything. Responding would only mean getting whooped by my parents who never listened to me. Time passed, and I was soon done with high school. On my graduation day, Jake had an event in college. My parents chose to attend his event and ditched my graduation.
It's just a party. Jake's event is more important. He makes us proud.
I'd rather be at his event than be at your graduation when you won't even be announced as the best graduating student. It's too embarrassing.
Of course, I felt bad. Regardless, I enjoyed my graduation. I didn't speak to anyone, but I felt good being among the students. I had to stay at home for 1 year because my parents didn't feel the need to send me to college yet. Since they hastened my sister's education, she graduated 1 year after I did. My brother had skipped class that day to attend her graduation. My sister wasn't the best graduating students, but anyone could see the pride smiles on their faces as they clapped and yelled out congratulations to her. I cried a little when I went to the restroom. That night, when we arrived home, my parents gifted her a very beautiful necklace. I hadn't gotten anything. She shoved it in my face, telling me how she was our parents' favorite and how they loved her more. My parents heard all of that and simply laughed about it. 1 week later, Penny suddenly cried from her bedroom.
Someone has stolen my necklace.
The whole house went into panic as we began looking around for the necklace. Jake suddenly suggested for everyone's rooms to be checked. I didn't have any opposition. However, shock froze me as the necklace was found in my room, in one of my drawers.
You steal now, Sally? Where did I go wrong with you?
I can't take this. I can't raise a thief. You're leaving my house today.
I cried and went on my knees, begging them desperately to not send me out. I'm not a thief. I didn't take her necklace. Believe me. Please, don't send me out. My pleas fell on deaf ears. Jake threw my things out and urged my parents to let me go. Of course, they weren't unwilling. I was sent out of my parents' home. They took my credit card and all the cash I had, leaving me stranded. It was a tough period for me. I roamed around streets, begging for money from anyone I came across. A few were kind enough to give me, but others simply shamed and pushed me away. Luckily, a good Samaritan found me and helped me. I told her all about what happened, and she felt so bad for me. She took me to her home and helped me with a job. After 2 years of doing multiple jobs and saving up enough money, I was able to move out and get my own apartment. The lady had become like a mother to me. I'd grown to love her so much. Life was tough, but I didn't give up. I worked so much harder. I was also able to begin my college education. After 4 years, at age 26, I started my fashion company. I hadn't heard about my parents' business for years, but I didn't care. I worked so hard to grow my company. Fortunately for me, people soon began showing massive interest in my brand. Soon, big brands began seeking collaboration with me. Life was beginning to go smoothly. By the time I was 28, I'd become one of the young rich ladies in the country. My business largely expanded with branches in 5 different countries. I built 2 houses. The kind lady who assisted me lived in one with her husband and children. We were all like a family. Surprisingly, my parents and siblings showed up in my house one day. Jake was on a wheelchair and Penny was heavily pregnant. My parents looked so old and tattered. They were seeking help from me. Jake had been rendered crippled in jail after a failed robbery attempt. Penny had gotten a great job, but had been scammed by her ex-boyfriend who'd pretended to be an investor. He'd not only scammed Penny, but also my parents. They'd already gone broke after spending a lot to bail Jake and have him treated. After Penny's ex-boyfriend absconded with their remaining wealth, they were reduced to church rats. They lived on the streets and fed by begging people. It was exciting to see them suffering. Perhaps it was karma for what they did to me, for all the trauma they gave me, the years I had to live with constant panic attacks, the sadness I felt, everything. They begged for money and a place to live, but I refused them. I would rather burn my money to ashes than help you all with anything. Get out of my house and don't let me ever see you again. They continued begging, my parents in tears, but I refused. I called on my guards who threw them out of my house. They were unfair to me throughout my life and never regarded me as their child. I don't have any reason to treat them well. Tit for tat. A few months later, I heard Penny had died during childbirth, and the news of her passing had caused my dad to have a heart attack, and he died as well. So my mom now takes care of my crippled brother, and she cleans people's houses to make a living. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
I didn't say anything more about it. As she got back to her conversation with her family, I quietly texted all of my family members present not to drink from the punch bowl. Very shortly after we had finished eating, people began to make toasts to us. It was then that whatever George put into the punch bowl kicked in. Almost at the exact same time, entire tables of people were vomiting all over the place. The room quickly became full of the smell of hot vomit. Because I had sent out that text message of warning to my family, it was only Alyssa's that was vomiting. Your wedding is supposed to be the happiest day of your life, right? Well, for me, it was the day that my life was ruined. I was so excited to spend the rest of my life with the love of my life, Alyssa. She was my high school sweetheart, and we kept dating all throughout college. I loved her so much and couldn't imagine living my life without her. After I graduated college, I realized that I wanted her in my life forever. Before I could propose to her, I had to make sure that I could provide for the two of us. I worked hard and got a promotion at my job. I was the youngest manager there. Everyone there was impressed with my work and wanted me to lead their teams. One of my bosses liked me so much that he even wanted me to take his position after he retired. I was set. With my finances secure, I knew that I could marry Alyssa in good conscience. We could afford a house and a family now. There was only one issue. We had gone through a lot over the years and had our fair share of fights, but we would always pull through them, stronger than ever. The only thing that continued to concern me was her father. Alyssa was a total daddy's girl, and I was never good enough in his eyes. I was a Navy SEAL for 30 years before I retired. I know how to protect and provide for my daughter. I know that as soon as there's any danger, you wouldn't be able to protect her. You're such a shrimp. I doubt you can even take a punch or protect my daughter from thieves. You look so weak. I absolutely can take care of her. I'm the youngest manager at my company, and I'm guaranteed a CEO position as soon as my boss retires. I don't care how much money you make. Alyssa is always well taken care of financially because of me. When I die, I won't be able to protect her anymore. She'll always have access to money, but not protection. You need to get your ducks in a row, son. I will never allow my daughter to be with someone like you. It would always bug me that Alyssa would be there for most of these fights. I thought that after all we had been through together, she would at least defend me. All she would do is shrug apologetically or avoid my eyes. It was almost as if she agreed with him. Vic, why don't you ever defend me to him?
I agree with some of the things he has to say. I don't agree with how he says it, but I would feel safer if you were, bigger. If there was someone that I knew who was bigger and made as much money as you, I'd be with them. I've just known you the longest, so it's easiest for me right now.
You would leave me for someone who was bigger than me? Do you not love me?
Oh, don't be hysterical, Ryan. Of course I do. I'm joking, obviously. It's not a big deal. Stop overreacting. If you were a real man, this wouldn't be an issue in the first place.
That was when I understood that if it ever came for her to choose between me and her father, she would always pick him over me. It broke my heart, but I tried not to think about it. I proposed to her anyways, and she accepted. On the day of the wedding, all of our families were there. I was filled with so much joy. I saw a lot of my family members that I hadn't seen in years. They were all congratulating me on how lucky I was to be marrying Alyssa. The ceremony was beautiful. I will never forget how breathtaking she looked in her white dress as she walked down the aisle. Tears welled in my eyes as I saw her. I tried my best to ignore the daggers George was staring at me from the left side of the room. His face was blood red, and his knuckles were white from grabbing the seat in front of him so tightly. Even though there was music playing, I could still hear him grumbling angrily to himself. I did my best to put him out of my mind. We said our vows to each other, kissed, and were married. Everyone except George cheered. At the reception was where everything went south. As I was sitting next to Alyssa, I noticed George standing by the punch bowl rather suspiciously. He was hovering around it nervously and looking around to see if anyone was watching him. He saw that I was watching and smiled at me. I tapped Alyssa on the shoulder to point out how suspicious her father was being, but she ignored me. She was too busy chatting away with her maid of honor. I watched him closely. He gave me a wink before tapping a brown powder into the drink and quickly stirred it with a ladle. He wiped the remaining residue on his pants before walking away. Surely he didn't poison the punch, right? Alyssa, your psychotic father just put something in the fruit punch bowl.
What? No, he didn't. He would never do that. You can't just make up lies about my father. He's your father too now. Get over yourself.
I didn't say anything more about it. As she got back to her conversation with her family, I quietly texted all of my family members present not to drink from the punch bowl. Very shortly after we had finished eating, people began to make toasts to us. It was then that whatever George put into the punch bowl kicked in. Almost at the exact same time, entire tables of people were vomiting all over the place. The room quickly became full of the smell of hot vomit. Because I had sent out that text message of warning to my family, it was only Alyssa's that was vomiting. Her family came up with the idea that it was me who had poisoned the punch. Alyssa became so angry with me and wouldn't listen to anything that I had to say. I tried to convince her that it was her father. "I saw him do it, Alyssa!" I yelled. Alyssa's distant relatives rose from their seats with George leading them against me.
You can't marry someone who poisons your family and then blames it on your father.
I knew you weren't good enough to be with me. What kind of person does this?
I told you he was up to no good, Pumpkin. Under the pressure from all of her family, Alyssa took me to court the next day and divorced me. I was married for a total of 12 hours, and I was absolutely devastated. Her father came by the house to take all of her things. He was gleeful as he packed all her things away, getting rid of the life the two of us had together for the past 9 years. I couldn't believe how little she trusted me after everything we had gone through together. When he was done packing everything, he turned to me with that smile of his that I had come to hate so deeply and said to me, "I told you I'd never allow it." I was miserable for a very long time after that. She had been in my life for so long, and it was hard to adjust to the hole she had left in my life without her. Luckily, I had my brother by my side. He never liked Alyssa, and was glad that we didn't work out. "You deserve so much better than her," he told me. Against my wishes, he would set me up on blind dates to get over her as quickly as possible. Soon, I met a girl who was Alyssa's complete opposite. She was kind to me, loved how I looked, and best of all, her father adored me. It wasn't long until the two of us got married and had 2 beautiful baby boys. My wife decided to name one after me and one after her father. A couple of years went by, and my boss finally retired. I was made CEO of the company, and I moved our little family to a nice, quiet beach town on the East Coast. I would have never thought I would ever be this happy or this wealthy. One day, I was going to the local coffee shop to get my morning coffee. I had the boys with me in the stroller. Before I walked in the building, I saw a homeless woman sitting outside on the ground. She was in ragged clothing and held a tin cup in her hands. Her hair was in shambles and looked like a rat's nest. I became slightly protective of my children and tried to hurry in the shop.
Ryan?
"Alyssa!"
I'm so glad I found you. I heard through the grapevine that you had moved over here, so I came over here to beg for you to come back. I know what my father did at the wedding.
She explained to me that years after the wedding fiasco, George got drunk at a family reunion and confessed that he was the one who had poisoned the punch. After this drunken outburst, the entire family turned against him and his daughter, refusing to speak to either of them. One of George's brothers actually was so upset that he pressed charges against him. George was originally sentenced to 4 years, but got into a prison fight within the first week. He was stabbed by another inmate, and he fought back in retaliation. He's now facing life in prison. As for Alyssa, she went on to marry someone that her father set her up with. The person that her father chose was also mentally unstable and would beat her. She managed to get a divorce, but he somehow won. She was responsible for paying him alimony. Everyone heard about how she had pinned the wedding poisoning on me, and no one wanted anything to do with her anymore. She couldn't find work or another husband. She was forced to sell her house and declare bankruptcy. She had been homeless for years. After she explained her story to me, she looked at my children in the stroller and smiled sadly.
If you think about it, it kind of is your fault. All you had to do was listen to my father and just better yourself so that you could provide for me like a real man would have. That's all you needed to do. You drove me to my father, and he turned out to be insane. You were the one who abandoned me, Ryan.
I gave you everything you needed. I provided you with food, put a roof over your head, and wasted the best years of my life on you. I'm happily married to a wife who loves me and have 2 beautiful children. The fact that you followed me across the country here speaks of how insane you are. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The only time I saw Alyssa after that was on the news. She died from an overdose in the streets a couple of weeks later. News of her passing reached her father in prison, and he was so depressed that no one will be visiting him behind bars. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel.